Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. It's another paid request. This time for Bogzombee. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, it could be for a topic, a reaction, a commentary, a review, a re-review, what have you. Feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And this is for Be Here to Love Me, a film about Townes Van Zandt. Came out in 2004, so wow. Just realized 20 years ago this came out. Never heard of this before, but it's a documentary about a guy named Townes Van Zandt who was a songwriter. I guess some would say one of the great unsung songwriters out there, who kind of under the radar for most or all of his career. But yet he influenced a lot of people. A lot of people really enjoyed him. Willie Nelson, Kris Kristofferson. In fact, Willie Nelson sang one of the guy's songs, did like a cover of it. And it pretty much goes through this guy's life of addiction, playing from bar to bar, living from motel to motel. And they interview a lot of people within his life, friends, managers, his 3 wives, his kids. And the thing is, you didn't really find anybody saying anything bad about him. So it seemed like that while this guy was addicted, he was a nice guy. It's just that he was sadly self-destructive. And you see interviews, a lot of old school interviews, home movies, interviews from like 1995. Talk about how he's going to get one last album out there. And he was a soft-spoken guy. And the whole thing had I guess the best way to put it, a melancholic sadness to it. And while the documentary, it was what it was, like, I didn't mind it. And sorry, I'm looking for something. I'm trying to do 2 things at once. It's one of those that, on the one hand, for me, yeah, I liked it. I thought it was okay. Was it a documentary that was exciting or thrilling or incredibly enticing in terms of it really pulled you in and didn't let go? No. I think you'll enjoy this the more that you know the subject matter or the more you're into music. But it was nice to hear this small but sad tale of a guy that could never beat his inner demon, so to speak. And I never heard the guy's songs before, and he was definitely a good songwriter. He was a good storyteller through his country songs. You know, lines like, his skin was like iron, your breath as hard as kerosene. A lot of good music. So, I mean, if you like that type of music, of course. And even when he's not singing, like, he would say lines like, you know, in a motel room, it's not much different between day and night. Which I guess is true, because you're in there and it feels like you're stuck there forever. And it was cool to have people like Willie Nelson and Kris Kristofferson there. This guy named Guy Clark, which I thought he was the funniest interviewee. This Guy Clark, like when we first see him, it's like, we're here to discuss and or cuss Mr. Townes Van Zandt. Or he's talking about a time with, it seemed like the guy was hitting on his wife, and Guy Clark and his wife Susanna are there, and they're kind of talking back and forth. And it's like, oh well, you're hugging him. Oh, nothing happened. Oh, I know, but oh that Kiki motherfucker. Like they're playful with each other, joking with each other. It's like, yeah, I think he had a thing for you. I think he had a thing for you. I think he's the guy that at the very end they show the funeral and he comes up and goes, well, but this 30 years ago, which got a big laughter, applause to enliven the mood. It is a pretty funny line. Well, I put this did 30 years ago. So I'm glad I saw it at least once because, again, it's a guy I never heard before. Now I know a little bit about. It's a guy that Again, seems like a very talented songwriter, so he should not be forgotten. And that a lot of people were influenced or his guitar playing and in the way he writes his songs, but at the same time, even this came out 20 years ago. If I walked up to someone on the street or someone on a YouTube or whatever and say, "Hey, what do you think of Townes Van Zandt?" They'd be like, "Who the hell's that?" So even now, I think most people sadly have forgotten about him, but guy with that talent shouldn't be forgotten. But again, sadly, he just had personal demons from the get-go. Addiction. I never really heard of this part of it, of people doing this, but obviously it was a thing where they take glue and they put it on a sock and they put it in their mouth and they huff the glue. At times it's airplane glue. Like they put it in the sock. They put it in. I never heard of that before, but apparently that's the thing people did back in the day. I guess at one point it was stuck in his teeth, and he had to take like a ball peen hammer, and of course then a lot of his teeth was gone, and I think he showed like maybe two of his teeth were left, and the others were fake. One sad thing is early on, his family saw they had this addiction, so they put him into this treatment, the experimental insulin shock therapy. But sadly, by doing that, it gave him long term memory loss where he didn't remember his childhood. Like, eventually, I mean, he would hear a story and go, okay, I guess that happened. And apparently, his mom, before he passed away, said the one thing she regrets is she wished she never had her son in that treatment because that long term memory loss. Now, I don't know if that was the inner demons or because throughout the documentary you'll see from time to time that it seems like he's getting better but he falls back into addiction, whether it be at one point he OD'd, at one point he was with a buddy, and then they were supposed to be all both clean and sober, and then the buddy came up to him like in an airport and saw that he was drunk, and then Townes Van Zandt looked at him with fear as if it's soon going to happen to me. Apparently, there's a bit where he would play Russian roulette, and he did it like 3 times. And I would sit there and go, why? Like, why is it? What were the personal demons that were so horrifying that he had to subject himself into playing Russian roulette multiple times and stuff? And it didn't really dive into that, which was disappointing. But I don't know, maybe it's one of those things that there was no answer. But I thought I would hear more from maybe the wives or I guess the kids were too young. Somebody like to dive a bit more as to what was it that drove him to this. But I don't know, maybe there was no easy answer. Maybe it was just, hey, sometimes addiction is addiction. You like it and then you enthrall with it. I don't know. I guess I wish we could have got more concrete answers with that. And then sometimes it would jump timelines and I would get a little bit confused. Like he's with his first wife. Then it's like all of a sudden now we're talking to his second wife. And I'm like, well, I would like to have heard a bit more on how the first wife, how that most of all split apart. We do hear a bit with the second wife where maybe a little bit more of why she broke up with him. Was it the addiction? Was it that he was so far away for so long? And like a little bit more enlightenment on that. Pretty much it plays out where he got like a hit song that he helped write and stuff. And he calls it, "We made it." And she's talking to him, and then he goes, "Was it a nice man that answered the phone?" And she's like, "Yes, and we're about ready to get married." I'm like, well, have you been divorced yet before you get married? So yeah, sometimes it would jump timelines, and it wasn't confusing, but it was like, okay, now we're to here. But I mean, it was a lot about his addiction. At one point, I guess he actually shot bourbon and Coca Cola into his veins. Even near the end of his life, like I say, there's a series of interviews in '95, but then he went in to record another album, and I guess that album was never finished because they mentioned they stopped. He was in bad shape. He had a seizure, something with his hip. There was pain. Then he was in a wheelchair. He died in 1997 of heart failure. He was 52 years old. It's a small, intimate documentary. It's a very soft spoken documentary where, again, it's a mix of his addiction and a mix of his songwriting. But at the same time, it seemed like anybody that met him or talked with him, they liked the guy. They thought he was a nice guy. They thought he was a pretty decent guy. Because a lot of times you hear these stories of addiction and there was some kind of physical assault or there was some kind of beratement or anger or... No. Sadly, the only person he hurt was himself. Even his kids, taught nicely. Sometimes they're a bit confused. Where, like, one of the kids mentioned how they called their mom and said, "You couldn't get me, but I don't want to tell dad because I don't want to make him feel bad." So you definitely feel a lot of love from the people in there. Like I said, Guy Clark was probably my favorite interviewee. And like I said, it was nice to hear the guy's song work. I mean, the guy himself says he was more concerned writing a good song than being a star. And you believe that with the guy about how, in the 1995 interviews he was wants each song to be as perfect as it can be. And I guess, and this wasn't concrete, I guess his last album never got finished. If it did, I wish they would have said that in the document. I didn't look it up. I guess I could have looked it up to be fair, but whether that's the case or not it should be in the documentary. Again, it seemed like they had to stop, and if that's the case, that means his last album never got finished. And if that was the case, then that's pretty damn tragic. Or at least I thought maybe they say in text, eventually the album was released and it was called blah blah blah. Whether it did well, didn't do well. Some kind of summarization, some kind of text at the end to kind of sum up the guy's life or his legacy or his career or such. Oh, it would have been nice to hear like Willie Nelson, Kris Kristofferson, these guys like, at the end say what this guy meant to the business. That he was unsung, legend, however you want to put it. So I won't put up there with my top favorite documentaries. Sometimes I would feel my attention slipping a bit from time to time. Kind of like it felt like we're going a bit of a circle. He's singing, then there's a bit of addiction, then he's singing, then there's a bit of addiction, kind of back and forth. Like I said, a little bit more into his demons, like what leads you, whether you're addicted or not, what leads you to doing Russian roulette. I mean, there's got to be something a bit more to that. Again, at that point in his life, is it because he couldn't remember his childhood? But at the same time, they didn't really like they brought it up, but they didn't delve into like he was depressed because of that. I mean, no one really said that. So again, there's some bits I thought were a bit lacking to make it really be a slam dunk, to be a home run. But like I said, if the subject matter, whether again the music genre or the singer himself, or just a small, intimate documentary where just to learn more about a guy I never heard before. It's nice that this exists, though. Because, again, the guy, from what I heard, seemed like he played really good music. He was really good at writing songs. And some of that talent shouldn't be forgotten. It's one of the worst things to be forgotten. Again, sadly, in today's age, to repeat myself, it does seem like he's forgotten. And that's too bad. That's too bad. So, like I said, if you're a gun-ho documentary fan, definitely worth a look. I don't think it was a bad one. Like I said, I'm glad I saw it at least once, thanks to Bogzombee. So, with that said, thanks for watching. Take care. And we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye for now.